Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today I figured I would do a follow-up to a video I did about 2 days ago, how to get Ratspin in Wizard101, with a how to get Deer Knight in Wizard101. Now obviously Deer Knight is not nearly as useful as Ratspin. It is a 5-pip AoE that does damage over time rather than a 4-pip AoE that just does a solid hit of damage, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be extremely useful on a Death Wizard. If you want to finish a mob fight a bit faster than using Scarecrow, it can potentially be useful, and definitely is useful in quite a few cases, or if you want to remove shields. It is a good spell to have on a Death. Maybe not as useful as Ratspin, but until we can actually get Ship of Fools to be craftable, I can't obviously do a craftable Ship of Fools guide, so instead we will do Deer Knight. Now it is a useful spell, I will say that. I used it a lot up until I got Ship of Fools. Like I used it throughout all of Zafaria, throughout Avalon, and then I got Ship of Fools in Azteca. But obviously I would have kept using Deer Knight probably until later in the game, and it's especially useful once you get that extra pip deck. So without further ado, let's get started in how to craft it. Starting off, you're going to want to come here into the Weird with the Indigo Giant here in front of the entrance to Dundara. You can see I entered that sigil. Come here, you need to beat him at least once, and then once you beat him, Grady will show up. And you need to be a legendary crafter to actually purchase the recipe. Once you're here, you obviously go to Deer Knight. You can see it costs 60,000 gold, so as long as you have that, you're fine. And you can buy the recipe and get started on how to craft it. Before we get into the actual reagents and the method of crafting it, you need to come here and do something first, specifically to Avery Templeton in Celestia Base Camp. I kind of glossed over this last video, but I don't want to make the same mistake again. You're going to want to come here, go to the reagent section, and buy 4 distinct transmute recipes that are all going to be extremely useful to this recipe. You want to buy transmute blood moss, transmute bone, transmute spring, and transmute sunstone. Transmute bone is not necessary, but you can still buy it if you can't find the bones in the bazaar for some reason. Bones, though, are an extremely common reagent, and it's really only if you don't have them, but the other 3 are nigh necessary to actually finish this recipe. So with that out of the way, let's start with the reagents. Starting with the Deer Knight treasure cards, I will be honest with you here. I will say these are probably going to be a lot easier to get than Ratspin, and by probably, I mean definitely. Deer Knight, first off, is not nearly as coveted as a spell as Ratspin. People have been crafting this for years. It's a really old spell, and it only takes 6 treasure cards. These treasure cards are sold in the bazaar semi-frequently, so if you want, you can just get these in the bazaar. But if you decide that you actually want to farm it instead of going to the bazaar, come here to Lore Master and farm the battle. I will say they do drop semi-frequently. I probably, across all my accounts, have enough Deer Knight reagents to craft Deer Knight like 10 times over, to be honest. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I can craft it definitely at least 3 or 4 times. But I will say, again, it is really easy. So just come here to Lore Master and farm her. She is decently easy, obviously a really easy boss. Most of you have probably already done. And you can get the treasure cards within a bit of farming, like probably within a day if you dedicated yourself hard enough. But now we're on to the reagents, which are a little bit more difficult. So I'm actually going to go ever so slightly out of order here just because I was right here and it's a lot easier. But one reagent you're going to need is Ghost Fire, and a really easy way to do that is just come to this reagent vendor outside of the Athenium or any reagent vendor post Dragonspire and buy the Ghost Fire. But you can buy 200 of it really easy. You can see here it'll only cost like 20,000 gold. Really easy, like nothing to be worried about, and this is probably one of the easiest reagents to get. Next up is another easy reagent, which is the Perfect Onyx. To get this, you just need to come to any reagent vendor following Zafaria, and you can see here you can come buy the Perfect Onyx. Really easy. I could just like buy that. Not that much gold, and really easy to get for this recipe. But next up, we have the more difficult reagents that are going to take a lot more grinding than those 2. So to start, we have Blood Moss, and if you don't know, Blood Moss is a actual pretty difficult reagent to get. It's used in quite a few recipes, and thus it's pretty rare in the bazaar, but it is pretty valuable, so you might be able to snag some from the bazaar if people are just naturally selling it. In regard to farming it though, one reason why I told you to pick up the Transmute Blood Moss is you can get it from 15 red mandrakes, which have a few places you can farm. One of the easiest is probably going to be the Savannah in Zafaria. There tends to be one or two right here around the entrance behind the huts. It's not an extremely efficient way to get it, but there isn't actually too many extremely efficient ways to get it. So you can just come here and realm hop back and forth and find some. Another good place to farm for red mandrake is actually just in Nightside here. There is 3 main spawn locations to my knowledge. One can spawn here behind the tree, but it doesn't look like one spawn there. One can spawn just around outside here, and then the last one can spawn behind this grave over here. You can see there actually was one spawn. So you can also realm hop here. You can also mark your location and travel between the two if you want, but that probably will be a bit more time consuming and just not as efficient in my opinion. But obviously if you want to, you can. Again, these are probably the 2 main areas you're going to be able to get red mandrakes and blood moss, but the bazaar also works if you're in a pinch. Next up on the recipe book is bones, and this is probably the one reagent I would say just come to the bazaar. That is a lot of blood moss that I'm just going to buy. This is the one reagent that I would say just come to the bazaar and buy it up, because you can see here there's 300 bones in here, and there is very frequently bones in the bazaar. They are really not like a particularly... Yes, I did just spend all of my gold on rare reagents, by the way. But bones are not a particularly valuable reagent, so you probably won't see too many people buying them up. But you can come here to the bazaar, buy 100 really easily. I think that, like, back in the day, I just bought like 400 of them. It's a really easy reagent to get, and you're not going to struggle all that much. Next up are springs, and there's 2 main recommendations I can give you for this. The first one, and this is probably going to be the longer and a little bit more rare one, is to just circle Regent Square. Literally just go along the outside here, follow my mouse, just go from building to building, and you can see that there tends to frequently be scrap iron just lying on the sidewalks. You can do this, and by the time you get all the way back to where you started, you can switch realms, and it's just a really nice fast loop to actually get some scrap iron. This is how I usually farm my scrap iron. Really easy way to get it, but there is another method if you want. So this next method isn't my favorite, but it's probably a little bit more consistent, is to come to the counterweights here in the Royal Museum, counterweight east, counterweight west, doesn't matter, and just enter the dungeon, and you can see, okay, this time it was unlucky, there's Mistwood, but a really easy way to do this is probably to enter the dungeon, escape, quit, press play again, and then enter the dungeon, and just keep doing that over and over again. There tends to be a guaranteed 1 reagent, whether it be mistwood and or scrap iron right at the start. So you can use this to get scrap iron. It might be slightly faster than Regent Square, and you don't have to realm hop. You can see here there can be multiple. I haven't gotten scrap iron yet, so you can see this one's a bit less consistent with what you're getting, but you're probably going to get it consistently more. And then you can see once you collect the reagents, you escape, quit, press play again, re-enter the dungeon. A really fast method of doing it, but I would say I prefer the Regent Square method, but you do you. Once you get enough scrap iron, you can transmute it into spring. Springs can also probably be found in the bazaar, because spring tends to be a reagent that's used very infrequently in recipes, so you might be able to snag some up. It's really just whether you can find it or not. If you can't, then come here, feel free. Otherwise, that's, in my opinion, the best way to get springs. All right, next up on our list is Sunstone, and this one I'm gonna tell you probably the slower but more consistent way to get it, or the faster but takes a bit of time method. The way that I've always done it is coming to Stone Town here and then just circling the sidewalks, and there tends to be sandstone just lying around. You can use that and use the transmute sandstone to get sunstone. Decently easy. It's not too bad if you want to do this. You just kind of circle around. There's also stone block and stuff, and stone block is pretty useful as well. But you can see it can be a bit rough when it comes to finding it can be a bit rough when it comes to finding sandstone. I didn't find any this loop at all, which is a bit rough. You can also obviously farm enemies. They are dropped extremely frequently. You can see I have 176 sunstone. It's literally all just from drops. Like, I promise you, none of this was from buying it. It's literally just from drops. because enemies in Arc 2, Arc 3 drop it very, very frequently. So if you probably already have some Sunstone, but if you don't have all of it, there is another method, and that would probably be to garden. Sunstone can be dropped from a garden from Deadly Elephant Ears, Evil Magma Peas, Fickle Pickles, King Parsleys, Maelstrom Snapdragons, and then Ultra Alligator Tree, Ultra Flytrap, and Ultra Tiger Lilies. I would recommend Evil Magma Peas if you have them, because then it doubles as you get Mega Snacks, and you actually potentially get some cool reagents. You also get some very valuable treasure cards, so not a bad way to go for it. Well, obviously, King Parsleys are also dropped semi-frequently. I find that if you're looking for these seeds, you can get them just from the bear enemies in the first area of Saverstead Pass in Grizzleheim. Really easy way to get Evil Magma Peas. The drops are definitely less frequent than Arc 3, but if you're crafting Deer Knight, you're probably not in Arc 3. If you're in Arc 3, just try to get some Evil Magma Pea drops from random enemies, specifically like the Gulchers in Mirage are pretty useful. If you can teleport into Mirage, that's a useful way to get them as well. The Death Gulchers right in Caravan, really easy. You can see I actually missed some sandstone here. Boom, 1 sandstone. But I will say, based on this, you can see Sunstone can be pretty rare and pretty hard to get at an earlier level. At a later level, you're probably going to get it more. I will say, though, Sunstone can probably be bought from the bazaar decently frequently because it sells for a lot. People see the price tag on it, especially lower levels. They see how much Sunstone sells for, and they sell it all. Trust me, I was there once as a kid. I used to sell all my Sunstone, and then when I realized I needed it for crafting, I was like, oh shit, and it was just it was a sad cycle. But that's probably going to be the best way you get it. And if you have any other ideas, let me know in the comments below, but I think that's the easiest. Finally, we once again have Amber. Now, Amber, as I said last video, has a few major methods of getting it. First off is from King Parsleys and Ultra King Parsleys. That can be one. Arena tickets, 2,500 each for Amber. You can get that if you do PvP. My personal favorite is to farm Cronus and Tartarus if you want. If you don't know, you just enter Tartarus at level 90, take an immediate left, and Cronus is in that room there. Really easy boss to farm, and it drops semi-frequently. If you're a higher level, you can farm Sand Squid, not my preference though. And then a new recommendation that I got is to come here and visit Castle Tours and to go to the Blacksmith's Fjord. So another way to get Amber that I've been told is a pretty decent way, and this is definitely a reusable way. Create a new character, go to the Castle Raider, go to a Blacksmith Fjord, and then come inside and go to this forge here. Apparently, and I've been told this, you can actually see I got quite a bit. You can see that it drops some decent reagents, and these reagents include Amber. So you can potentially get Amber this way and just farm new characters, transfer them over to a new character, and then delete that character and rinse and repeat. This process will probably take like a few minutes per character and won't be too bad. Definitely an interesting way to get Amber, and one that I saw that I thought was really good and really interesting. I don't know if I personally would do it, but I think it's actually a pretty good way to get Amber. But that's really it. You can see that is every way to get every reagent here, and you can see I actually already have almost all of them just from a little bit of vibing. I already had quite a bit of them, but definitely I'm almost finished the recipe now. Really easy way to get it, and a decent spell to craft. Again, Deer Knight will be useful to you Arc 2 if you don't have Ship of Fools, and definitely Arc 3, right up until you maybe get the Dragoon Amulet spell, but overall is really solid. So that's going to be it for today. Let me know what you think. Do you think Deer Knight's worth crafting? Do you have any different ways to get the reagents that I maybe didn't mention? Let me know. I'm really interested. But otherwise, that is it. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Adios.